Hello, my dear Web3 enthusiasts. This is Max speaking, and welcome to the new exciting episode of Synopsis. Today, I have a great guest for you, and this is Jay Jog, co-founder of Sei Labs. Hi, Jay. How are you today?
Hey Max, thanks for having me on, man.
Yes, super excited about this podcast and to warm up. And since it's your first time at Synopsis, could you please introduce yourself for our audience? So we've got a uh, opinion that you have a massive track record. So could you please tell us about your journey in Web3?
Absolutely. So, in terms of my story, I grew up in California, so San Francisco Bay Area. Went to college and studied computer science down at UCLA. And I initially got into crypto back in 2017. At that time, I was still in college, and my friends that were graduating, this is kind of wild, honestly. Like, they're graduating, and back then, if you joined Facebook as a new grad software engineer, they'd give you around $100,000 signing bonus. And literally the second you signed, they'd give you half of that up front. So you get like $50,000 to do whatever you wanted. And then afterwards, you get the remaining 50K after you join. So in 2017, this is like around early, so January, February 2017, they took their entire signing bonus and they put it into Ether. And this is when Ether was like 50, $60 per token. So it was just crazy to see them like get into crypto at that time. And then I saw them write it up. And then, as you can expect, they became very risk on. So they got out of Ether. They traded it into a lot of other altcoins. They ended up losing all their money by the end of it. Like they just ended up breaking even. But yeah, it was wild to kind of see that from the financial side. And that was my initial exposure to crypto. After that, I graduated and I started working at Robinhood, the brokerage in the United States. And at that time, I was living in Menlo Park. My roommate, he was getting his master's at Stanford, and he was co-founding a crypto company. And they're going through Binance Labs. So at that time, I was tinkering on a few different things with him. And that's how I learned more about the technical side of crypto, smart contract development, and like how blockchains actually work. So after that, I was there at Robinhood. And do you remember the GameStop saga from back in 2021?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was there when the GameStop saga happened. And for any listeners that might not remember it, there were around a dozen stocks that were these meme stocks, like GameStop, AMC, and the price of these stocks was just like going to the moon. It literally made no sense at all. Initially, these stocks likely were undervalued. Like the initial people that bought into these stocks, they saw a fundamentals kind of argument for buying these stocks. But then afterwards, it just became kind of like this cult following on Wall Street Bets, which is a subreddit. And a lot of people started buying into it. There were these sophisticated market participants that saw this. They're like, financially, this makes no sense. So we're going to short it, which is betting against the stock. And when you short an asset, you basically have to borrow the asset, sell it, and then you need to buy it back later to return the asset. So because of that, the price kept going up and they were betting for the price to go down. So they were losing money. And in order for them to close their position, like once they lost enough money, they needed to close their position. You actually need to buy back that asset. So you buy it back and then return that asset. So if the price has gone up, you need to buy it, which leads to even more buy pressure. And that led to a short squeeze for all these assets. So it was an absolutely crazy time. Like everything was going to the moon. And then just one day out of the blue, Robinhood turned off buys. And that caused just national, if not international outrage. Like everyone was very confused. And a lot of people were extremely like pissed off at Robinhood. And I was there when that happened, right? Like I woke up one day and it was like, okay, Robinhood has turned off buys on AMC, GameStop, and all the other stocks. And I'm like, huh, that makes no sense at all. Like this is one of the best performing things for the company. This is where they're making most of their money from right now. Why are they turning off buys? And I think that they did a very poor job of communicating around that. The actual reason that they needed to turn off buys is because they needed to put up collateral with counterparties just because of how the American financial system works. But like normal people, they didn't understand that. And Robinhood didn't make a very good attempt to educate people about that. So people just thought Robinhood was kind of being like uh, supporting these big players like Citadel and not really supporting the little guy. And yeah, I mean, as an insider when all that was going down, it was extremely demoralizing because you basically put your reputation on the line when you're joining a company like Robinhood. So everyone you know starts hitting you up like, yo, man, what the hell is happening inside? Like, why are you guys doing this? And I don't know what to be telling them because I found out about stuff at literally the same time as them. So kind of going through that experience, one thing that I realized is that the traditional financial system, it doesn't make any sense. Like it's built with technology that was created in like the 1980s, for example. This idea of like T+2 settlement, I mean, which has now become T+1 settlement, but it still takes like 24 hours for a trade to settle. That makes no sense at all. Like we're living in this age of like the internet in 2025, it makes no sense at all for these things to be taking 24 hours to settle. It should be happening like instantly. So I think long story short, I definitely think that the financial system needs an upgrade. And that's why we initially started working on Sei. So we wanted to build an order book based exchange. So you can think of it like a decentralized Robinhood. And that led us down the entire journey. So initially it was a decentralized Robinhood. That then led to us realizing, okay, we should instead just build the entire infrastructure as well. Because back then there was no chain that could actually support something like a decentralized Robinhood. Like back then there was Solana in 2021. Solana did not really work for those types of use cases. Like, and I can go into that as well. And a lot of other chains didn't really make sense either. So we decided to build our own infrastructure at the start. There was going to be an app chain like Hyperliquid. Except we realized pretty early on that it's really difficult to build both the application and the infrastructure. And it makes more sense to build the infrastructure to be general purpose infrastructure and let other application builders come and build on top. Because that leads to more credible neutrality and it becomes easier to build a much bigger ecosystem on top. So that led to Sei V1, which we launched on mainnet in August of 2023. So, I mean, almost 2 years ago now, which is pretty crazy. That was a COSM-WASM based general purpose chain. COSM-WASM turns out doesn't have that much developer demand. Like most developers right now are building with the EVM. So it's really difficult to get developers to come and start building on top. That then led to us realizing, okay, we need to be supporting the EVM and we need to be solving some of the problems that EVM developers are facing to get them to come and start building on Sei. And that led to Sei V2, which was the first parallelized EVM. And essentially the insight we had is that there's two problems with the EVM right now. The first is performance, and the second is user experience. So if we're able to improve those, then we're going to actually draw in more developers. And I think that was, in hindsight, one of the best decisions we ever made. We put out the V2 blog post, which basically made Sei have the best qualities of Solana and Ethereum, where you got the EVM and all the tooling developers mindshare around that. And then you also got the speed that you see with chains like Solana. So everyone was really excited about that. That went live July of last year. And that then led us to the drawing board again in terms of what do we want to build next? So we realized that performance still continues to be one of the biggest bottlenecks. And even with what we've accomplished with Sei V2, that's not enough. So we need to continue pushing the bounds. And that led to Sei Giga, which is the first multi-proposer EVM L1. And I would say that's the most recent upgrade we've been pushing out, which will be just further creating a magnitude improvement in terms of performance.
Wow, what a great start and massive track record, as I said. And now we know all the motivations and how it all started. So thank you. And one more thing to mention is like what I really enjoy about asking the founders of tier one projects, like how your journey in Web3 started. And everyone says it was 2018, 2017. And every time it reminds me of how young the entire industry is. So like kind of a pleasure to hear to it and realize this. So
yeah. So just like one side note around that, I think if you're in early stage, like someone who's studying computer science early in your career, I think there's only two industries that are like crypto right now. It's basically crypto and AI. Every other industry, there's people like you need to be much older in a way, like much more experienced, much better networked in order to really make an impact. I think crypto is really special because you can be much younger. And I think the open source nature of it makes it so that there's a lot more flexibility in terms of what you can build because you're able to build on top of what other people are doing. And I think that just allows younger founders to do much better in crypto than other places.
yeah, absolutely. Sounds pretty encouraging for the young specialists, I would say. So if you guys choosing which direction to take, consider crypto. At least if you are watching this, it means you are enthusiast. Okay, so a great start, and I have several, I would say, philosophical questions prepared for today. The next one is going to be kind of that. So, and it's going to be short. So, in your opinion, Jay, can EVM solve all the Web3 world's needs?
So I think the EVM is technology that allows people to build interesting things on top. So I don't think EVM by itself will solve all the problems in crypto, but I think the EVM gives you all the firepower you need to solve all the to solve all the problems in crypto, if that makes sense. So if you think about what the EVM is, it's a general purpose Turing complete virtual machine. So you can build whatever you want on it. And I think the biggest problem in crypto right now is a lack of interesting applications. Like these killer applications are what draw people in. And if you don't have that many interesting killer applications, then there's no reason to come into crypto. Like that is the bigger bottleneck, I think, in terms of drawing in more normal people. So the EVM is well positioned to support that. I would say one of the current restrictions that the EVM has on other chains, such as Ethereum L1 and most rollups, is that it has a very restrictive design space for developers. So if you look at most other chains, the kind of performance you get on those chains is somewhere around 50 to 200 transactions per second. NASDAQ needs 20,000 transactions per second. So if you're trying to build something like, let's say, an order book based exchange like NASDAQ, you literally cannot build that on most EVM chains just because the kind of performance that it needs is not possible to support. And what that results in is developers needing to take shortcuts. Like if you need to operate in this 200 transaction per second design space, then you need to build applications that are clunkier. And an example of this would be an automated market maker. Automated market makers don't exist in traditional finance because they're less capital efficient and they're just clunkier to be using overall. Like they lead to more problems. And it's taken off in crypto purely because of the restrictions of the EVM. So I think that the EVM definitely needs to evolve. I think EVM by itself isn't going to be fixing all of crypto's problems. And I think that if the EVM evolves to a point where it offers no restrictions for developers, like if developers are able to build the same things in crypto as they are in Web 2, I think that'll be one of the first big unlocks. I think the second big unlock that needs to happen around the EVM is the onboarding experience needs to be simpler. Like you don't need, expecting normal people to maintain a seed phrase is going to just result in crypto being inaccessible, right? Like maintaining a seed phrase, like knowing not to write it down on your computer, like making sure it's like handwritten somewhere or something, like all that stuff just makes it too complex for normal people. So I think those problems need to be solved. And I think both of those problems are trending in the right direction. Like the work we're doing from the performance side for the EVM, I think that's going to be solving a lot of the problems I just mentioned. And then there's a lot of projects that are building a strong onboarding experience as well for new users. So I think in the next 2-year time horizon, crypto will be at a point where the infrastructure is mature enough to be supporting most types of applications getting built on chain.
Awesome. So you say there is a lack of interesting apps, and what about the chains actually? So I believe there is no lack in layer 2s and in layer 1. So how do you think? Do we need more of them so they keep on appearing? And maybe it's time to stop and pay more attention to working on the existing ones, quality over quantity?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because I think a better way of thinking about this might be what is the market going to be rewarding moving forward? Because it doesn't matter what I think, right? What matters at the end of the day is how markets view layer 1s and layer 2s and whether there will be investor interest, both from VCs at the earlier stage and then normal audiences at a later stage. And in that perspective, I think that there will continue being appetite on differentiated infrastructure. I think that if you build another general purpose chain that is offering similar types of performance, similar types of application extensibilities, like the types of applications are kind of the same that you can build on top. I don't think there will be that much appetite from that side. I think that 2 years ago, for example, when like Sei was launching, like that was probably the prime time to be launching something like that. I think since then it's become much more saturated. But I think that if you're going to be building something like an app chain, there might be more appetite for that. I personally don't think that app chains are going to work out though, for the reason that I mentioned before in terms of how it's difficult to grow a community around something like that when you're building both the application and the infrastructure. But yeah, so I think that to answer your question, do we need more general purpose chains? No. Will there continue to be more general purpose chains built? Absolutely. And I think there will be some differentiators to add on top, which will result in some potentially interesting use cases. And I broadly do agree with the idea that now we need to start spending more time as an industry on applications. The only issue is that it's easy to say that. I think it's much harder for a lot of investors to support that at the earlier stage, which is why we haven't been seeing that many folks going and trying to build applications as we'd like to see.
Yeah, getting now closer to the part of discussing Sei Network, of course. It's been almost 2 years since Sei Network launched publicly. What do you consider the network's biggest achievement during this time?
Yeah. So the biggest achievement was the Sei V2 launch, which happened in July of 2024, so around a year ago. And if you think about a project like Sei, success means getting developers to build on top. Like if you kind of zoom out and think about Sei as like a business, it'll be the customers are developers. So because of that, success means getting more developers to be able to start building on chain. And I think what Sei V2 really allowed is for a completely new design space for developers that had previously not existed on any chain at all. If you look at performance for L1s that are out there or just infrastructure that's out there right now, Sei is the highest performing EVM chain by, I mean, in order of magnitude more than other projects. So I think that that does result in a much bigger design space for developers, and that's resulted in a huge number of applications getting built on top. So I mean, back in 2023 when Sei first launched, like there really weren't that many applications that were there. I think as soon as the V2 project or V2 went live, basically every primitive you can think of got deployed, and now there's starting to be more and more experimentation in terms of, for example, games, social applications, DeFi. So just a lot more interesting primitives and applications getting built.
Awesome. And connected with the topics we've already discussed before, how does Sei Network help scale the EVM?
Yeah, so basically what we do is we take the EVM and we are parallelizing the EVM. So the EVM is a virtual machine. So it's able to take in Solidity contracts, which then get compiled down to EVM bytecode, and then it's able to interpret that bytecode. What traditionally happens with the EVM is when you're processing these transactions that are coming in, they're processed sequentially. So let's say that there's 10 transactions coming in. Transaction one gets processed, then transaction two, then transaction three, etc. If you think about it, this is really simple. It's not complicated at all. But it's really inefficient because there's a lot of times that these transactions could be processed at the same time. So an example over here would be if person A is sending some Sei tokens to person B, and then person C is sending some Sei tokens to person D. Those transactions could be processed at the exact same time. You don't need them to be happening one after the other. So in cases such as that, where these transactions are independent from one another, the idea of parallelism makes a lot of sense. And parallelization is not a novel idea by any means. Like it's been used in traditional computer science for decades now. The insight that we had is that it's not being used in the EVM, which is kind of surprising if you think about it. And I mean, the reason for that, I think, is you need to zoom out and think about like how the EVM was built in the first place. When they were building the EVM, they were essentially the first ones to build this kind of general purpose Turing complete smart contracting language, smart contracting framework. So performance was not really the most important thing they had in mind. Back then, the most important thing was getting something working, especially because they were running out of money. And then once Ethereum went live, it became incrementally harder and harder to upgrade it for greater performance while still meeting the kind of technical restrictions that Ethereum has. Like in Ethereum's case, they want to be supporting thousands, tens of thousands of validator nodes. They want people to be using Raspberry Pis to process these transactions. And if you have those kind of restrictions, like a Raspberry Pi is not a very performant machine. So being able to process a transaction, like a set of transactions with that becomes incrementally more difficult. So in our case, we realized, okay, we don't agree with that take on decentralization. We don't think that you need to have people running a Raspberry Pi to validate transactions. We think that it makes more sense to push for offering the best type of performance you can offer to users while still being sufficiently decentralized. So in the case of Sei, we started taking these transactions and we're processing them in parallel. We make use of this approach called optimistic parallelization, which I can go into if you're curious. And this approach allows us to be processing these transactions at the same time, which helps us get substantially improved performance. There's some other things we did as well, like we improved the way consensus works, we improved the way storage works. And I think a combination of all of these have resulted in Sei V2 getting up to 5,000 transactions per second, which is an order of magnitude more than what you see with other EVM chains. And with Sei Giga, now we're like pushing the bounds even further by allowing multiple validators that are proposing transactions, proposing blocks at the same time.
Also, thank you. So, sounds like a lot of info, but even not a technical person like me understood everything. So everything's clear and in order. Thanks for that. Great talent you have. And another thing I'd like to discuss is Sei Giga. Could you tell us more about it? So, will it be the next iteration of Sei mainnet, and what are the trade-offs you're accepted to address with the blockchain trilemma challenges?
Yeah. Yeah. So Sei Giga is the next upgrade that we have planned for Sei mainnet. And if you go back to July of last year, we had launched Sei V2, and the question in our minds is, what's next? We felt like we hadn't adequately solved performance problems because with 5,000 TPS, you can't really even support NASDAQ, and NASDAQ only represents 10% of all securities trading activity. So if you want to be able to get all essentially securities trading activity in the future to happen on chain, you need to get to 200,000 TPS. And we thought to ourselves, okay, that's a good milestone for us to aim for, basically having all trading activity happening on chain. And that led to us basically thinking, how do we achieve that? Like we looked at our current implementation of Sei V2, we benchmarked which parts of it were inefficient. And it turns out that the biggest inefficiency was data propagation, which means being able to actually transmit the block contents from one validator to another was a very slow process. And that's something that is bound by the speed of light because you're literally transmitting packets of data between one data center to another data center for the most part. So because of that, we realized, okay, we need to have a better approach to data propagation. Um, we also looked at the other parts of the stack. So we realized that our execution client was built with the Cosmos SDK, and the Cosmos SDK is not built for performance. So that's when we realized, okay, we need to just build this completely from scratch if we want to be able to handle all trading activity in the future. And then we also realized that the way that we're handling state, specifically around how we generate state commitments, is inefficient as well. So we moved from a tree-based approach to an accumulator-based approach. So from all of these changes, we've been able to get in our internal DevNet, we've been able to get over 200,000 transactions per second, which translates to over 5 gigagas per second. And it's just a huge kind of it's like multiple magnitudes greater than you see on other projects in terms of performance. So I think that will like arguably solve a lot of the performance problems we're seeing right now. And I think that is the next step in the journey of evolving the EVM.
Awesome. And continue the topic of the huge steps. So, Sei has recently launched the network improvement proposal for a framework. So, yeah, as I said, it's a huge step for a blockchain because it means its community becomes self-sufficient. So, what are the first SIPs about?
Yeah, so I think the most important SIP that has come up so far is SIP3, which is to make Sei EVM only. So Sei V2, what I was mentioning before, Sei V1 was called Awesome. Sei V2, we introduced the EVM. But because of how it's complicated to take an existing chain and then add in, like, replace the execution environment, what we ended up doing is we added it in. So Sei V2 has both Awesome and EVM. Now, this is something that no other chain has done in mainnet before, and it introduces a lot of complexity. Like from the user experience side, there's now this concept of address linking, where you need to link your EVM address and your Wasm address, which is not intuitive to people, right? From the infrastructure partner standpoints, like if you're running an indexer, for example, it's different than what you see with the EVM, because with the EVM, you just process EVM transactions. But now you need to process EVM and Wasm transactions, which is definitely very, very different. And even from like the core protocol maintainability side, it's much harder. Like the protocol engineers at Sei Labs have a harder time maintaining it when there's both of these versus only supporting the EVM. So because of that, we realized this is a problem. We also saw that basically all activity after V2 has been only EVM activity. Like in the SIP, in the SIP, there's like a chart that shows just how much of the activity is EVM activity. And I want to say it's like 98, 99% of all activity right now is EVM activity. So it became very clear that like no one is using the cause and Wasm side. It's causing a bunch of friction. So let's remove that. And that's exactly what the SIP is. And I'm really excited for it because and I mean, it's passed now, so I'm even more excited. Like when we remove it, it'll make it so that it's a much cleaner user experience. And it makes it much easier to do future upgrades like Sei Giga, for example.
Wow, awesome. So this was about the recent news, and now time to discuss maybe some announcements for the, I would say, midterm. Already this has been slightly touched by you, but now you can drop more details, more plans. So could you tell us what is in the store for Sei for the next 2 years?
Next 2 years, yeah. So from Sei Labs, I would say the big things to look out for are implementing SIP3. So the upgrades to fully remove the Cosmosm and Cosmos sides. And I think that'll lead to a much cleaner user experience. The second big thing is the Sei Giga upgrade. So Sei Giga, it'll be a series of different changes that need to be made because we're making changes on the consensus side, we're making changes on the execution side, and also on the storage side. So I don't think it'll just be like one hard fork. I think there'll be multiple changes that need to happen over there. But that will result in, say, becoming I mean, it already is the fastest UVM chain. It'll continue that process of having, say, the highest throughput and lowest latency EVM chain. From the broader network side, what I'm most excited for is a lot of the new applications that are kind of in stealth right now that'll be launching. I think broadly speaking, when you have higher performance like this, there's certain types of applications that really, really tend to shine. Um, One of these is tied to trading. Like you can't build trading systems on low latency infrastructure. So trading applications are going to be having a renaissance on Sei that they have not been able to have on any other EVM chain. The second thing is AI agents. So anything tied to agentic processes, like having an agent spun up and then doing stuff like trading tokens on your behalf or doing stuff on chain, that again needs a lot of throughput. Like it needs to be able to do a lot of stuff. And if you can't support that on whatever infrastructure you're built on, it just doesn't work. So I think Sei is probably going to be one of the places where AI agents can actually work. So I'm excited to see that play out as well. And even right now, there's a ton of stuff that we have been doing from that side. Like Sei is going to be one of the first projects to create an MCP server, which is a model context protocol server, which allows projects such as like Cursor or like Claude to be actually interacting with the MCP server to initiate reads and writes on the blockchain. So that's going to be really, really exciting. And yeah, the last thought that I'll end that at is games. I think games need a huge amount of throughput as well. And that's historically why they haven't been able to do very well on other chains. Sei is already having a huge amount of game activity that's starting to take off. And I think that process will continue in the future as well.
Awesome. So no doubt all the goals will be reached and will be tracking your success. And another big thing everyone is discussing and keeps an eye on, besides AI agents, is for sure right now regulations. So just in your opinion, what recent crypto-related regulations do you consider the most beneficial for the industry? And
Yeah.
are there any regulations that hold the Web3 back? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the past year has been really exciting from the regulatory side. Um, the previous SEC chair was very antagonistic to crypto. And I think now, just with the Trump administration coming to power earlier this year, it's resulted in a much different perspective on crypto from regulators. So the two that I'm most excited about right now are like the two biggest bills that are being pushed through Congress, which are the stablecoin bill and then the market structuring bill. So the reason the stablecoin bill is exciting is I think that having more stablecoin legitimacy is kind of a no-brainer. Like from the United States standpoint, it's good to have everyone trading USD. If everyone's using USD, whether it's USDC, USDT, whatever, it results in demand for the US dollar, which helps reinforce the kind of power of the US dollar. So from that standpoint, it's kind of a no-brainer for the US government to be supporting. And I think having better support for stablecoins will result in it becoming a much easier primitive to be using on chain. And the market structuring bill, I think, is probably the most significant thing for any crypto, basically anyone working in the crypto industry in the United States. And I think just more broadly as well, because it makes it much easier to know what are the lines for like what counts as a commodity, what counts as a security. And I think it also makes clear like what counts as sufficiently decentralized. So I think that will make it much easier for crypto to not be in a gray area. It'll be very clear like this project basically been approved in terms of whatever the regulations are. And once that happens, I think it really makes it easy for investors to underwrite the risk of investing in crypto. Because if you're an investor right now, there's like this regulatory risk that you need to account for, which results in you probably putting in less money into crypto. But if that regulatory risk is gone, if it's just viewed as like a very traditional type of asset class, it becomes much easier to invest in that. And what I see happening from that is more money coming in, which then results in more entrepreneurs that see that opportunity. They're like, okay, I can build cool stuff over here, so I'm going to experiment more. And when that happens, it creates this like virtuous cycle where like more money comes in, more people start building stuff. Once there's more stuff that gets built, then there's like new interesting stuff for people to invest in. And I think we'll start seeing that loop happen. And there's in the past like 20, 30 years, there's only been a handful of industries where that's worked out really well. I would say the internet has been one very clear example of that. And I think crypto will be another kind of example on that, which will lead to a step function change in how society operates.
Wow, awesome. So just awesome. And we're getting closer to the end of this podcast. Sounds bitter, but yeah. One of the last questions for today. So are some insights, some ideas, what to keep an eye on. So in your opinion, Jay, what new Web3 industry trends are going to become mainstream in a couple of years? So will AI agents and AI still dominate, or there is something underestimated and we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, so I think the no-brainer answer to that is AI agents. Um, in terms of the rails that AI agents will be using for payments, it is an absolute no-brainer that it will be a internet native medium of payments happening. And I think we're starting to see more and more support for this as well. Like recently, Coinbase launched their X402 protocol, which allows for like basically there's like an X payment header where you can include a proof of payment that's been included to some kind of like server that you're paying. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more primitives being built on that side. So AI agents are hyped up right now, but I actually think that they're underhyped relative to how much of an impact that they'll be having in the future. So that's probably going to be one of the bigger trends that we see happening in the next few years that I'm very bullish on.
Awesome. So it seems like AI agents just blow the minds of the industry. So in the beginning of this year, I was just trying to learn what this thing is and how it can be useful. And right now, like everyone is just talking about AI agents. And yes, this is just another illustration of how rapid things are going in this industry. And the time was also going rapidly. And during the great, interesting discussion, it literally flies. So here we are at our final traditional part of each podcast. So could you please tell some advice to our audience? This might be some call to action, something to pay attention to, or any piece of wisdom you'd like to put into our viewers' minds. So anything, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just give a piece of advice that I was mentioning to folks on our team actually earlier this week, which is it's really easy to be on the sidelines and like just read about different projects and not really build a strong intuition for how they work. The best way to actually understand how different projects work is to actually go and try them out. So I'd highly recommend any viewers, like if there's projects that you've been following that you like crypto projects, it's definitely worth like going on chain and actually trying it out because that's the best way to understand how a lot of these mechanisms work. I think that will allow you to have a much better and deeper understanding of the industry overall.
Awesome. Agree with every single word. So yeah, this is the best way to do your own research, like do it with your hands. So yeah, thank you for this great advice and thanks for this entire positive and encouraging interview we had today. Thanks for joining, Jay, and thanks for our audience for watching till the end. I believe there is 100% of viewers because it was super confident, fluent, and insightful. So thanks for everyone.
All right. Thank you, Max.
Yeah, so guys, if you have any questions left for Jay, please drop it in the comment section or subscribe to Jay on X, other socials. So also follow Synopsis not to reach more episodes. And for the day, that's it. So thanks for everyone once again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.